West Coast, West Coast, West Coast, West Coast.
What's good, gang? It's your boy Illuminati 15, and you have just tuned in to DPG TV, Talk That Shit Podcast, Hip Hop News Edition. You know the fucking vibes. So I just want to start off by saying thank you to everybody that tunes in right now. It's something I've been working on for the past couple days, and I hope that you guys find this as intriguing as I have. So let's start off with this. In the past couple days, we know that there's been a series of incidents that happened. An individual by the name of Keffe D was arrested in connection to Tupac's murder in September of 1996. On that note, I'm just gonna go into everything. I'm going to be sharing some details that I gathered from watching documentaries, public information that led to this arrest that's been around for years, possible decades. So let's start off with this, right? Let's start off with the background, right? In the labyrinth that is the mysteries surrounding the murder of Tupac and Biggie. A new chapter unfolds with the arrest of Keffe D. Today we dive into the theory suggesting that Keffe D might be a key figure targeted by law enforcement, possibly due to his role and the last credible link to the events that the fateful night in Vegas. But what was Keffe D's part in this, right? Could he be the missing link that could tie Diddy to the murder of Tupac? And I do personally believe that this might be the situation. But let's talk about the background, right? To understand this theory, we first got to go back to the days leading back to Tupac's murder. An individual by the name of Orlando Anderson, which we can see right here. This to my left is Orlando Anderson. A known Southside Crip from California was at the center of the conflict, particularly after the physical confrontation that the individual had, that we all know about, that's public knowledge, that happened in the MGM Grand the night of September 6th after the Mike Tyson fight, where Tupac and Suge Knight literally jumped an individual, and that just happened to be Orlando Anderson. Rumors of a bounty at this time were going around in the streets, claiming that Diddy had actually put up a bounty for $5,000 to anybody that could bring him a death row chain. Due to that situation and that bounty being put up, it is rumored that Orlando Anderson, a few months prior to the Tyson fight around June or July, that summer of 96, was in a physical confrontation with an individual that happened to be a death row affiliate. And when that physical altercation happened, Orlando Anderson gets the chance to strip that person from their death row chain. But even before then, an incident in an Atlanta nightclub, right, will leave Suge Knight's bodyguard and best friend dead in Atlanta. This period marked the tension that started and literally skyrocketed after these events that led to the East Coast West Coast altercation back in the mid and late 90s. This period marked the tension between the East Coast and West Coast hip hop scenes, with Biggie and Tupac caught in a crossfire. Now that you guys know the basics, I want to go into how the reason where possibly it took so long to get any information on both of these cases, and it revolves around corruption with the LAPD and signs of this corruption going on, discovered by an individual by the name of Detective Russell Poole. So this is LAPD Detective Russell Poole, and his theory pointed fingers at dirty cops within the force, probably working for Suge Knight Suge Knight's very own death row while off duty as cops. His suspicions grew, leading to a cover-up theory, and eventually his resignation in 1999 from the force after being transferred off of the Biggie and Tupac force that was established in the late 90s after presenting his evidence of a possible cover-up to the LAPD. Soon after that, Biggie's mother goes ahead after these speculations and puts up a $400 million lawsuit against the LAPD for wrongful death on behalf of her son that passed away in March of 1997, 6 months after Tupac dies. This now puts LAPD in a very sticky situation where they're either gonna have to run the chances of losing this lawsuit to Biggie Small's mother or putting a task force together and figuring out and getting to the bottom of both the murders of Tupac and Biggie. Poole then finds evidence while in his time with the task force that pops up with two different individuals. An individual by the name of David Mack. A moment. Right? This is David Mack, LAPD officer, but also a known affiliate of Death Row. And then leading to that, it's also Kevin Gaines, another off-duty cop that happens under the evidence that was brought out in attention by Detective Poole. That happens to be another Death Row affiliate and possible cop that was under Death Row payroll. So while investigating into these two, Poole finds evidence that an individual by the name of Kevin Gaines was shot and killed after a road rage incident in LA that was instigated by Gaines himself. Poole finds out details about Gaines' private life, revealing that Gaines was actively dating Suge Wife's at the time wife. Also on top of that, finding receipts from an establishment by the name of Monty Steakhouse, which was at the time a well-known chill spot for the Death Row affiliates and crew that worked for Death Row at the time, which also led Detective Poole to believe that the individual might possibly be a Death Row affiliate and have ties to Death Row. Then after that, close this out. Let's go back to David Mack. This is the individual David Mack. So in the matter of David Mack, Detective Poole finds out that he was arrested a month after a bank robbery had happened, a month prior to Biggie Small's murder, right? This individual, as an off-duty cop, actually attempted to rob a bank and got away with it for about a month or so, taking about close to $1 million from the bank, and it was all reported, but he was not found guilty of that crime at that time. So with this suspicion, Detective Poole goes into literally searching David Mack's home, and in David Mack's home, they find gang paraphernalia that was like photographs of David Mack in red tuxedos, which now it's known to be kind of like that was the fit at the time, or that was like the way that Death Row affiliates dressed when they stepped out in business alongside Suge Knight. Also on top of that, they found a rare type of 9mm Gecko ammunition, which was the same type of ammo that was found at the crime scene and murder scene of Tupac. Not of Tupac, of Biggie Smalls back in March of 1997. And to add on to finding the same type of ammunition that was found at Biggie's murder scene, they also find a dark colored Chevy SS Hold on, Joker. I think your mic is so crazy. I bet. Good looking out for the tip, Joker. So on that note, then I lost my train of thought. All right, yeah. So on top of finding the 9mm gecko, on top of finding a 9mm gecko ammunition, they also found a dark colored Chevy SS Impala that fit the description of the car reported to have peeled off after the shots rang out that led to Biggie Smalls' murder. So soon after that, after bringing all this evidence to the LAPD, Detective Poole brings this to the LAPD, and LAPD literally just dusts it off, says that it's nothing that can be solidified. And a couple months after presenting his evidence to the LAPD, Detective Poole is transferred off of the Biggie and Tupac task force in 1999. So soon after this, he actually ends up partnering with an individual by the name of Randall Sullivan, that is a how do I say this? Is an author, and they end up writing a novel called Labyrinth. And that kind of goes into the theories of what caused Biggie and Tupac's death. Then soon after that, in 2002, he ends up taking place in a documentary by the name called Biggie and Tupac in that production. But now that you guys see kind of like the investigative background that goes into these cases and the background that starts off with the main suspect, which happens to be Orlando Brown, now let's go into the individual that was just recently arrested, the one and only Keffe D. So this individual right here is the individual that was arrested in Nevada. Keffe D. So let's shift our focus to him. Keffe D just happens to be Orlando Anderson's uncle. His recent arrest raises questions about the timing. He was arrested because he is the last living credible figure tied to the events of 1996 that revolved around Tupac's shooting. Keffe D's intricate involvement in the narrative includes a rumored debt between Bad Boys and the Southside Crips soon after the murder of Tupac. Also being an individual that was both present at both locations at the MGM Grand and at the Vibe Party, which were these two main key events that led to Tupac's death in 1996 and then Biggie's death 6 months later. So let's get into it, right? Keffe D was interviewed by the Tupac and Biggie task force in 1997. Just off the simple fact that after the killing of Tupac, that $1 million debt rumor of Diddy owing the Southside LA Crips $1 million was spreading around in the streets, so they decided to look into it. In 1998, Keffe D has spoken to the FBI about the incident revolving around his nephew being assaulted by Tupac, Suge Knight, and Death Row affiliates at the MGM Grand on September 16th of 1996. First, Keffe D stated he told his nephew Orlando to just leave it alone, let it go, that they could not retaliate against Death Row at that moment, and that he believed that Suge Knight was the one that got Tupac killed because he was preparing to leave Death Row. Keffe then tells the feds that Puffy himself personally invited him to the Vibes after party, which happens to be the event that him and Biggie were attending to before Biggie got shot. Keffe then states he had offered Diddy extra security that night, the night of the Vibe party, because he was letting it be known to Diddy that it was well known that there were some blood affiliates there were some blood affiliates present at that event, and that he should worry about retaliation due to the simple fact that Tupac had just died about 6 months prior to this event taking place. Diddy then tells Keffe D then states to the feds that soon after telling this to Diddy, Diddy tells him, I have the FBI breathing down my neck. I got this. And that he does not want the heat that is falling on him to then fall on Keffe D. Soon after this, Keffe D tells and states that he had nothing to do with the death of Biggie Smalls that night after the vibe party. Keffe then goes into details about how he met Diddy back in 1993 through a New York drug connect that he knew that was associated with Diddy and many others in the New York music scene / celebrity scene by the name of Zip. So I'm going to show you guys a picture of Zip, but this picture kind of gives you a better feeling of how possibly Zip was intertwined with the celebrity and high status people in New York at the time in the 90s. So the gentleman to the left happens to be Zip. And as we can all see, the gentleman that has his arm wrapped around his shoulder is Mike Tyson. So Keffe describes that he met Diddy through Zip in 1993, supposedly at a celebrity basketball game. Diddy, when speaking to the FBI in 1997, stated that he had no connection or knowledge who Zip or Keffe were when interrogated by the Biggie and Tupac task force. Keffe D then states after a performance at the Anaheim Coliseum, Diddy hosted a party in a hotel, but also invited Keffe, and all Keffe asked for him to attend this event. He asked supposedly Diddy for like 30 or 40 tickets, so him and his associates of the Southside Crips can make their way to the concert as well. So Keffe D states after the performance at the Anaheim Coliseum, Diddy hosted a party in a hotel room. During that gathering in a room full of Southside Crips, Diddy openly stated he wanted Tupac, Shakur, and Suge Knight's heads, and he was willing to give whoever did this act whatever they desired in return. As a reaction to this, Keffe D states to the federal agents that he spoke with in 2008, I believe, that he was actually shocked. He was shocked and he was surprised by Sean Combs' actions that night. He was surprised of how bold he was and how openly he was speaking about it in a room full of gangsters, right? So on top of that, while this is going on, the feds are kind of looking at it like, well, maybe there was alcohol involved. Maybe he's just talking shit. Or maybe he's just like, sticking his chest out, trying to make it seem like he's not scared of death row. Then Keffe states, there was a second solicitation between him and Sean Combs. But this solicitation actually took place at an establishment in LA by the name of Greenblatt's Deli. Right? At Greenblatt's Deli, Keffe states to the federal agents that he's speaking with that while at Greenblatt's, after getting some cold cuts and drinking some wine and some alcohol, that Diddy asked to speak to him in private. After this happens, him and Diddy go to the first floor of Blatt's Deli, and he states that Diddy literally tells him, I need Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur dead, and Diddy offers him $1 million to literally make sure that these individuals are taken care of. So with this second solicitation happening, Um, now it seemed to be taken more serious by the FBI just for the simple fact that it's no way that this can be like misinterpreted as showboating or just talking shit, because this person took the incentive to separate themselves from others to have a one-on-one conversation. So on top of that, the feds, while speaking to Keffe D, after speaking to him, were able to literally confirm this information that was stated by Keffe, because the feds actually had confidential informants within the Southside Crips that had given the same story 10 years prior, 1997. But when this was actually spoken about by the feds in 1997, this information was actually leaked to the LA Times, and the LA Times published a an article around this information, but misdelivered, stating that it was actually Biggie Smalls, not Sean Combs, aka Diddy, that solicited this conversation in ordering a hit on Tupac and Suge. So after that, Keffe D then states that he had lunch at Greenblatt's Deli before heading down to Vegas the day before the Vegas fight. Now, he did state that this conversation with Diddy happened months prior. It could have possibly been like 2-3 weeks before the I mean, not 2-3 weeks, 2-3 months before this happened. But we do know, like I explained to you guys earlier, in that summer of 1996, Diddy did make another solicitation where he let it be known while in Cali that he was offering $5,000 to whoever brought him a death row chain. So at this point, Keffe D is making it seem like Diddy is in a lot of people's ear and he's throwing money around, letting it be known that he's willing to pay for people to kind of like bring harm or be violent towards death row in Cali. So this is the timeline that Keffe D gives us on how he ended up in Vegas that day, right? So he says that the day prior to the fight, which is September 15th, 1996, he goes to Greenblatt's Deli, he eats lunch, gets into his car, and then drives down to Vegas for the fight the day prior, also contacting Zip, and him and Zip coming down to the agreement that they would meet up in Vegas. The next day, his nephew, Orlando Anderson, which I spoke about earlier, which is the individual that gets assaulted by Tupac and death row, he then calls his uncle. His uncle tells him, "I'm on my way." And Orlando Anderson actually drives down to Vegas the next day, which is the day of the Tyson fight. So when Orlando leaves, they end up renting a white Cadillac, him and two other associates of the Southside Crips, and drive down to Vegas to meet up with Zip and Keffe D. After meeting up with one another, it is stated that the group of men, included Keffe D and Orlando Anderson, are seen driving around Vegas in a white Cadillac car, which is the same type of vehicle that was described by witnesses the night of Tupac's murder, that carried the individuals that shot Tupac on the Las Vegas Strip. Keffe D then states the total opposite, that he then states the total opposite that he stated to the FBI 10 years prior in 1997. Instead of trying to calm down Orlando, after Orlando comes to him, Zip, and other Crip affiliates, he now states that he spoke to Orlando about retaliating instantly after Orlando told him that he had got jumped and assaulted by associates of death row. Right? Bro. So That happens, and he goes more into detail, now stating he spoke about retaliation instantly after hearing out about Orlando being jumped by Tupac and Death Row at the casino floor at the MGM Grand. Zip then tells Keffe that it would be the perfect opportunity to cash in on that offer that Diddy had made to Keffe at Greenblatt's. Um prior to the events of Tupac's murder. Then offering Keffe, right? Then offering Keffe a 40 caliber Glock that he had stashed in his car at the time that he was there. Mind you, at the time it is stated, and it is on record, that Keffe D speaks about it. When this happened, the person that happens to be in a car with Zip at the time is Foxy Brown. So Keffe and Zip ask Foxy to leave the car. When they step into the car, Zip goes into a hidden compartment where he pulls out the 40 caliber Glock and hands it over to Keffe. This is also backed by a witness that was interviewed by the Las Vegas PD, stating that there was a witness at the MGM after Orlando went to Keffe and told him that he got jumped by Death Row. This witness actually states to the Las Vegas PD that someone within the group of Orlando speaks out loud and says, who the fuck does Tupac think he is? We gangbang out here. And then after that, the words are literally heard being said from Zip, we have artillery out here, which is going and leading to them stating that they have access to guns while out in Vegas. Zip then asked Keffe D if he was coming, in which Keffe then replied, we know where they're going to be at. They're going to be at the 662. So leading up to this, leading up to after Orlando Anderson is assaulted by Tupac and Death Row, it was kind of easy, and it wasn't hard to find out where Tupac and Suge were going to be at after these incidents, because Tupac was under contract with a club in Las Vegas by the name of 662 to make an appearance and perform, while also it was rumored that they also had Tyson coming by the club after winning that fight. So everybody knew, it was public information, that sooner than later Tupac, Suge Knight, and Death Row were going to be at this club. There was no way that they could miss it. They were under contract, and there was also rumors going around that at this time, while all of this was going on, Suge was also speaking business with the owners of 662 to buy the establishment and make it part of the Death Row company and property of Death Row in Vegas. So after saying that they're going to be at the 662 club, Keffe then states himself that Zip, Orlando, right? It was Keffe D, Zip, and Orlando, and they were just outside, parked in front of 662, waiting to see Tupac, waiting to see Suge Knight, waiting to see anybody that had to do with Death Row. So they said that they stood in the parking lot, parked for about 20 minutes. Nobody came along. And at this time, Keffe D states that they resumed to leave the parking lot and go to purchase alcohol at a liquor store, leaving the 662 parking lot. At which, in this time, a few Southside Crips decide to back away from the situation. They're in the car, the original car that Keffe D was in. They start ranting about, yo, what if like we do this? You know, it's rumored that Suge has dirty cops in LA. We're not gonna be able to get away with this. And Keffe D literally calls them busters, tells them to leave. And that's how Keffe D ends up stepping into the white Cadillac that is carrying the the individuals with himself that happened to be Keffe D, right? T Brown, DeAndre Anderson, no, DeAndre Smith, and then his nephew behind him, Orlando Anderson. I'm gonna show you guys the diagram to kind of give you the perspective of how Keffe D reported they were sitting in the car. So this is the white Cadillac that they're supposedly just, you know, scoping out 662. They're sitting in the car just waiting to see if they bump into Tupac or Suge. Now, as you can see, this is Keffe D right here on the top right. Behind him is reported that it was Orlando Anderson, his nephew. To the left, this is T Brown, which is the person driving the car. And then behind T Brown is Andre Anderson. I mean Andre Smith. So these individuals get into the car after purchasing the alcohol and getting some marijuana. And Keffe then enters a Cadillac, which is occupied by these individuals. The authorities were able to find proof of all four of these individuals actually being present in Vegas that night that Tupac died, solidifying even more that it is a higher possibility that all four of these individuals were in this car. So the authorities were able to find proof of all four individuals in a Cadillac were all present in Vegas that night, even though T Brown, the individual at the bottom left, denied being in Vegas. A month later, he was arrested, and then he was found in possession of Las Vegas postcards, also being placed at the scene by DeAndre Smith while he was arrested and charged for crimes that weren't related to the Tupac murder. But while being interrogated for that, they asked him about T Brown, and he pinned T Brown in the car with them that night while speaking to LAPD. Keffe D then states that while driving down the Las Vegas Strip in a white Cadillac, there was women screaming close to the sidewalk on his right, but happens to be a group of females that was in a green car that was parallel to Tupac's BMW that night while he was riding down the Las Vegas Strip. So this happens to get Keffe's attention, and that's how they were able to pinpoint that it was Tupac and Death Row going down the street that they just happened to be driving right on. So Keffe D then states, after spotting the large group of cars, the white Cadillac drove parallel to each car, one by one, trying to see and check which car was carrying Suge and Tupac. At this point, after driving up and noticing that the car that's parallel to the green car is the car, the BMW carrying Suge Knight and Tupac, this is when Keffe D states he tried to hand over the Glock 40 to DeAndre Anderson, stating that DeAndre Anderson would be the person to have the best shot because the car that was carrying Tupac and Biggie was to their left. He couldn't shoot out the window because he's not facing the car. And it would be dangerous for him to reach over to his left and discharge the weapon, knowing that the person that's driving the car will be facing the weapon. So he tries to reach behind him diagonally to his to his left hand side and hand the Glock over to DeAndre. DeAndre then after that raises his hands and says, "Nah, B, not me. I'm not doing that." Which then leads to, as stated by Keffe D, his nephew behind him grabbing the Glock, reaching over DeAndre to the left-sided window, pointing the gun diagonally out the window towards Tupac, and rapidly shooting the gun 9 times. But in stating this, he also does state that when they drove up to the car, he can confirm that that him and Suge actually locked eyes when they pulled up to that light parallel to Suge and Tupac's BMW, right? He just states that him and him and Suge Knight made eye contact. Suge knows him supposedly since they were like both 8 years old. So if him and Suge locked eyes, is a fact that Suge would know who shot Tupac, right? In 1997, a confidential federal witness states this exact same story that Keffe is now feeding and giving to FBI in 2009 seems to be exactly the same, but minor details. But they're able to confirm Keffe's story because it's the same story that was given in 1997 to the Biggie and Tupac task force. The same person that gave that story in 1997 also reports that they had bumped into Orlando Anderson 24 hours the next day. So literally Tupac gets shot. Everybody that's in that car goes back to Cali. They go back to Cali, and the same person that gives the same almost exact story that Keffe D did 10 years later states that he bumped into Orlando Anderson the next day in Cali, and all Orlando Anderson is doing is literally bragging about being the person behind the gun, being the trigger man, and shooting at Tupac. So by doing this, right? By doing this and speaking all of this to the feds, we now see that Keffe D went out of his way to literally confirm that the shooter and the killer responsible for Tupac's murder was his own nephew, Orlando Anderson. But mind you, at the time when giving this confession, Orlando Anderson was already dead. Orlando Anderson, I believe, died in 2000 or 2001 after being shot in LA. Right? So, moving on to the connection with Keffe D and Diddy. So, Keffe D's statements to the FBI provide a chilling story, right? He claims Diddy spoke on wanting Tupac and Suge Knight dead, not once but twice. Then on the second time, offering Keffe D a supposed $1 million for the murder of Tupac and Suge Knight. The alleged solicitations took place first at the hotel after the BET concert at the Anaheim Coliseum, and then again at Blad's Deli, where it was a one-on-one between Diddy and Keffe. Then months later at Greenblatt's. Diddy's bold statements on those nights literally translate into actions. Did anybody take it serious enough to want to go out of their way, get these things done, and then want to get that reward back from Diddy? And if so, why did he deny any connections to Keffe D and Zip to the FBI when he was interrogated in 1997? Right? Why would you willingly lie to the feds to protect yourself, or even protect people that you state have no connection to you, that you don't even know who they are? Right? It would make sense for you to lie to the FBI and say, I don't know these dudes. It would be the common, a common sense thing to do, to say, I don't know them, if you didn't really know them. We understand that it's street politics. Nobody wants to bring that type of attention or heat to the record label. That's understandable. But why lie about these two individuals and try to protect them from keeping any type of connection that you have to them from the FBI? So if so, why did Diddy deny his connections to Keffe D and Zip? Was Diddy willing to lie to the FBI to protect himself and the company he worked so hard to build from the ground up? Was Diddy really willing to go to the extreme of hiring Southside Crips to bring an end to his rivals from the West Coast, Tupac and Suge Knight? That's the really big question. I feel like, respectfully, whether it was taken serious or not, it would be very it would be very reckless. Be very reckless for Tupac. It'd be very reckless for Tupac. I mean, for Diddy to be speaking like that out in public, to even make it be known that he wants these people dead. That can lead to a whole nother line of reactions, or people taking it seriously enough to where they react to your actions and the words that are coming out of your mouth, and actually ends up with somebody being killed. Um, so now, like, my question is, could Keffe D's arrest just be an arrest, or could it be just like a small step into now rebuilding this web that has been built now for almost 15, 20 years, right? But why want to rebuild it now that most of the people that can back any of these stories are dead? They're no longer breathing, or they're doing life in jail and found non-credible by the authorities back when they tried to speak out, right? So then this arrest literally brings up multiple questions. So the recent arrest of Keffe D adds a layer of complexity and narrative. Why now, after 25 years, after more than 25 years, could Keffe D's revelations potentially implicate Diddy and Bad Boy Records in Tupac's murder? After numerous encounters with the LAPD, Las Vegas PD, and the FBI, why now? Could Keffe D really hold the key to linking Diddy and Bad Boy to the Tupac murder? And if that's the case, it's clear as day why Diddy would go out of his way to deny any association to Keffe D and Zip. It would be in Diddy's best interest to deny knowing these individuals, to stay away from any chances of being accused of being gang related, or even worse, being the one who possibly ordered and funded the murder of Tupac Shakur. But then again, if that was the true intentions of Diddy's reasonings for lying, why allow Keffe D and Zip to approach / interact with him at the vibe party months prior to Christopher Wallace's death? Moments prior to Christopher Wallace's death, right? So it's literally on record, guys. They have a tape from, I believe, it's Little C's, which happens to be Biggie Small's cousin, stating that he placed Zip and Keffe at the vibe party. And earlier, if you guys were listening, Keffe does tell the FBI in 2009 that he was personally invited to the vibe party by Diddy. Right? How could this connection not have been made? It's on record. Little C says they were there. And the way that he explains it is literally stating, I don't know them personally, right? But I know they were cool. I seen them backstage a few times at some of our concerts. And he says that in the moment that Keffe and Zip go to approach Biggie and Puff, Bad Boy security stops them. And then it takes Biggie and Diddy to both tell Bad Boy security to let them through, that they're cool. So how can we ignore this? It's a known fact that they know who they are, but how can nobody like pin these two figures together? And why would Diddy lie about not knowing somebody, but then eventually still make the reckless move of being seen publicly with these individuals? So, as stated by Little C's, Bad Boy artist, he recognized Keffe D and Zip from prior concerts, also stating that Keffe D and Zip were stopped in their tracks by Bad Boy security when walking to approach Diddy. Diddy and Biggie then said security that they're all cool, allowing Keffe and Zip both approaching Diddy and giving Diddy and Biggie a pound, dabbing them up, exchanging a few words, and then walking away. So it is a possibility that Keffe really did warn Diddy about the blood members in attendance at the vibe party that night, in the brief moment that they had together at the vibe party? And if so, why didn't Diddy accept the extra security offered to him by Keffe D and Zip that night prior to Biggie's death that happened, let's say a couple moments, not directly after that, but they had that exchange, and possibly an hour or two later, that's when Biggie ends up getting shot, leaving the vibe party. Was Diddy really trying to keep the heat he was getting from the FBI at the time for falling onto Keffe D and the Southside Crips? If so, why go out of his way to do so and even try lying to the FBI about not having any ties to these men and the group that they affiliate with? Why try and protect the same people he stated not to know? Right? That's the big question here. Why incriminate yourself in lying to the FBI? And then he got away with it. He got away with it. Like, he's still here now, 27 years later. So he clearly got away with it. But if Keffe D now speaks, will he be able to get away with it again? That's the question, right? This is why I named in the in the thumbnail title for this video, murderer or music mogul, right? Because let's be honest, guys. Let's be honest. From a legal standpoint, if you paid for Pac to get shot and the retaliation comes back around in 6 months, that makes you just as liable and responsible for Biggie's death. So you killed your op, and then on top of that, that led to your brother getting shot. You just as responsible. Those chain of events happened because of the actions that you made. Right? Now, me adding my personal opinion on this. A couple days ago, I was strolling through Instagram and I happened to cross paths with an interview that happened from an ex-Danity Kane member by the name of Aubrey O'Day. Aubrey was well known for being part of Danity Kane, and then after Danity Kane ended, she dated on and off the famous reality star and DJ by the name of Paulie D. So Aubrey states that literally all we was hearing about before Keffe D got arrested was Diddy giving back his masters, the masters of the music that he made with bad boy artists, back to the artists. But Audrey speaks out and states that she rejected the offer of taking the masters back from Diddy because to make everything final, she would have to sign an NDA that states that her as an artist, as an individual, she cannot speak on a matter of subject that is Diddy or Bad Boy, right? I find that very shady, especially with the timeline. All these things happened about 3-4 weeks before Keffe D even was arrested. And we can clearly see that Diddy has enough influence where he can get lawyered up and his lawyer can figure out or inform Diddy prior to arrest being made if something is coming his way. And to me, I feel like that is the situation that Diddy is in right now. Why the sudden change of heart? And if so, if it is such a pure change of heart, why have people sign NDAs that state they can't speak on your name or your company? That makes it seem like Diddy is trying to put himself in a position that if they decide to get anybody that's tied to him or Bad Boy to sit on a stand, they legally can't because they signed an agreement stating that they cannot speak on his behalf. As him as a subject of matter, that to me is shady as fuck. You know what I'm saying? And it's something that is not being reported by CNN. I sat here and I watched the CNN reports about Keffe D's arrest, and none of them state anything about Diddy. None of them state any connection that Diddy could have possibly had to these individuals, Zip, Keffe, Orlando Anderson, any of them, right? But they try to water it down to the point where they just made it seem like it was just a blood versus Crip thing, and Tupac just happened to fall as like a bystander of these situations jumping off in Vegas. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. And anybody that believes that has to be like not mentally right, because that could never be the case ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's something here. And I feel like when the feds or whoever it is that's leading this new investigation comes down to it, if they do not mention Diddy's name in these investigations, it's something that is just trying to be finally put to rest and swept under the rug so they can close it, seal it, bury it, and forget about it. And if that's the route that it takes, then I'm sorry. The authorities didn't do their job correctly. And Diddy gets away with being the cause of death for two of the greatest fucking influential artists to ever grace the genre of hip hop history. And that to me is wrong. So to close this out, we're going to close it out like this. As we navigate the intricate web of conspiracy, one thing is clear. The shadows of the past continue to cast doubt on the events that night in Las Vegas. Whether Keffe D holds the key to unlocking the truth, or if this arrest is just merely a chapter in a long, convoluted story, the answers remain elusive and dodgy. The connections between hip hop crime, crime and corruption persists, leaving us to question what really happened to Tupac Shakur. On that note, I want to thank everybody that takes their time to watch this video. I appreciate you guys. I decided to do this as a news segment, but by Friday, I will have this in a video essay form ready for you guys to watch to the most professional capability that I can. On that note, thank you guys. This is your boy Illuminati 15. If you find anything that I said in this video interesting, or if you have your own theories, don't be afraid to go into the comment section, share your theories with me, and I will literally be interacting with you guys in the comments after this. Thank you guys so much. My name is Illuminati 15. I'm out of here. Much love. And